What I seriously mean, we had, my friends, a certain cliché of you students here, that mostly relatively well-standing, in early years this was the rule, art curators who just wanted to get some stuff to bluff in their introductions. You know, I have such a bad experience with these art curators. I listened to one of them. I left after 5 minutes. He said, "We live in a post-Kantian universe." And he didn't have an idea what is Kant and so on, you know. So it was that. And also, if I may put it like this, they didn't have a respect. I don't mean respect towards me. I mean, look at me. How can you, if you're I mean respect towards the autonomous logic of theory. Did you also have this experience? How I'm explaining Kant to them. Ethics. Oh my God, is this a bad sign? No. Yeah. And one guy told me, one of these curators, Kant is wrong. I did yesterday an ethical act. I didn't experience it like that. I'm like, yeah, fuck you, who cares? Who are you even? You know, experience for me doesn't count as. And this is I will go, don't be afraid, I will not lose my thread. This is also one of the problems in the bad version of Me Too and so on, a too direct reference to the experience. For example, I was one of those who argued, okay, it's horror, I agree, Weinstein and so on, but I still have some problems. Did, for example, C.K. Louis, the comedian, did he really deserve his entire career to be ruined? I don't think so. And the counter answer, some women started to shout at me in New York, was, who am I to judge them? This is how they experience. They can also, but my point is, are they aware that by reasoning like this, they are reproducing the worst Cartesian cliché against women? That we men can reason, while women cannot move beyond their experience. You know, if a woman... Then my second argument against experience is, again, it's not a measure of justice. They say, maybe a woman experiences this as utter violence. My answer is, okay, and maybe I am a racist, and if a black man comes too close to me, I am disgusted. And you tell me, okay, it's false. I tell them, fuck you, sorry, I experience. Experience is not, and that's also the lesson of psychoanalysis. As Freud says, except anxiety, all other emotions or whatever you call them cheat, you know. So I think that, okay, let me not get close. I will tell you to disappoint you what I plan to do today. Something extremely simple. I will keep my word, my promise already to students. You will get 2 very substantial philosophical texts tomorrow. To whom should I send them? Is it you, Nemanja? Is it who? You. To whom should I send a text so that it reaches you all? You. Okay. And then you will be, fuck you, selling them around for 10 Swiss francs. Or yeah. Okay, no, sorry. What I mean is that one that I appreciate very much, I think I did a relatively great thing about, you know, all these paradoxes of place twisted into itself. In mathematics, it's called unorientables. The basic simple one is Möbius strip, no? And then there are 3. The most complex is Klein bottle. And I try to promote this as an ontological model, to cut the long story short. And I think you deserve this one. And what I promised you, one on what I missed on very simple introduction, philosophy today and sexual difference, but not sexual difference precisely. And here I must do publicity for my colleagues. Alenka did a book which is even doing very well. If some of you are from her class, you know what is sex. The thesis is very daring one. It's that we have, of course, this pre-modern, not even ontologies, cosmologies which are deeply sexualized. Usually the origin universe is some male principle is screwing some feminine principle, you know. Night, day, night, spirit, earth, light, darkness, whatever. Now, modernity, the big event of modernity is to be the desexualized universe. Like, it's just this gray, boring, I think Pascal has this wonderful formula, this infinite, vast universe. Now, Lacan's paradox is that he reintroduces sexual difference, but I claim absolutely not in the sense of this ancient resexualization and so on. And there is a guy here, I mean in a positive way, who I hope we will have tomorrow time, who asked me precisely this question, which is central today. And it shouldn't be answered in an easy way. I will approach it towards the end of today's talk. I already improvised this in my class. Like, what's still the role of philosophy today? There are good reasons. Hawking, in philosophically very bad book, his one before the last, nonetheless makes an apparently convincing case. No? He says that, look, what were traditionally big metaphysical questions, out of scope of science, do we have free will? Is our universe finite or infinite? Science is dealing with this problem today. It's neurology, cognitive sciences which try to resolve this problem of free will. It's quantum cosmology which tries to decide is the universe finite or infinite and so on. So what remains of philosophy? His answer is nothing. Maybe just some kind of general methodological reflections and so on and so on. And I think this is maybe the big tension in modern contemporary philosophy. And I think that philosophers then try to isolate, or whatever you call it, a space which nonetheless remains to philosophy. The usual question, reply is, he is today's, don't underestimate him, today's state philosopher. I don't agree with him, Habermas. His idea is a typical, very easy transcendental terms. Science can explain everything, but it's this basic reflexive transcendental term, but it's nonetheless caught in a circle. I explain this as a natural process causality, but in advance I already have to approach in this scientific way nature. It's not simply I look around and nature appears like this. Nature, this is the classical Heideggerian point even, nature has already to appear to me or to be conceived in this way to me. Like that nature is a causal link or whatever, even with all the further complexities of quantum physics and so on. So the idea is that in order to explain everything, maybe even our brain, our mind through, it must be always already here. A certain modern scientific approach to nature. And this is then the hermeneutic question, no? Like, but I see problems here. This is the position that many people share, even if they appear to be opposed, from Heidegger to deconstructionists and so on. The idea is that you never get, as it were, an innocent view, innocent in the sense that not predetermined with our horizon of understanding of nature. But then the conclusion, and Heidegger was here truly radical, he systematically raised the question here. What am I saying here is, take somebody like Michel Foucault, whom I appreciate greatly. Sorry if this will be repetitive to you, but if you ask him, for example, do we have a free will? His answer would have been to reject the question in this direct naivety. He would have said, it doesn't matter what answer you give, to raise in its today's meaning this question, you already have to be within a certain episteme. Because in some other approaches to the world, such a question is meaningless. Or does is everything naturally determined by natural causality, or is something that escapes natural causality? Of course, answer would have been, this question itself presupposes a certain approach to reality, where reality appears to you as a nexus of causal effects, chain of causes and effects, and so on. So, for him, this direct ontological question, if you then insist, but fuck you, but what about really? Are we free or not? He would have refused this question as too naive. For him, Germans, if you are some Germans here, have this beautiful phrase, I love it, unhintergehbar, what you cannot move behind. That the further we can go is this, what Heidegger called, I'm oversimplifying here, Lichtung, openness of being, the way things appear to us. And we cannot step out of it and ask, okay, but how things really are? Because precisely how things really are always appears within a certain horizon, and so on and so on. So, but Heidegger, not being an idiot, he, a couple of times very mysteriously, he raises the question, beginning in his wonderful, where he has all these thoughts about animal, lizard, stone, human beings. He says, but what about things, to put it naively, in themselves? In the naive sense of course, let's say a table, a stone appear to me in a certain way, always. Like, this is the great motive already of the early Heidegger. You know, this in der Welt sein, how I always, the way I perceive this table is overdetermined by my entire practical approach and so on. But the problem is, but how are things really if I drop that? Does this table simply continue and so on? And Heidegger said, and he repeats the same in one of his very last his conversation with Eugen Fink on Heraclitus. He has says the same thing. He said, I totally neglected this. And what me, my Slovene gang, me, Mladen, Alenka, are now obsessed with, literally, repeatedly approaching this. It's precisely how to approach this, let's call it limit of the transcendental approach, to move beyond, but without regressing into the old naive realism. No, you cannot say, forget about ourselves, let's just look at things the way they really are. This is, for me, pre-Kantian, pre-critical naivety. We cannot do it. So if you are interested in this, I will definitely send you one text on this. And then, I'm sorry if you know this story, but most of you are new here. Let me amuse you before I go to my topic with another detail story where I see here the interest of quantum physics. Why I again and again return to it, although, I mean, I don't understand it, but you know, all honest scientists in nuclear physics, you know, one of the most famous Feynman's sayings is, nobody understands quantum physics. It's just mathematics works, you know. But I'm sorry if you know this story, but it's beautiful. I think that the interest of quantum physics is to elaborate something, again, a strange connection, which in a way Heidegger, when he speaks about Verborgenheit, openness and how nature is hidden and so on, approaches in a different way, namely what fascinates me immensely in quantum physics is this idea of ontologically incomplete universe. And I try to elaborate consequences of it. What do I mean by this? Not the simple idea, as it is usually misread, that we cannot ever know nature fully. Every idiot knows this. Quantum physics is much more radical. Look at if you know a little bit, now I will give you a little bit of my bluffing, you know. That's the difference between Heisenberg, the bad guy in this case, and Niels Bohr. Heisenberg formulated the so-called uncertainty principle. You cannot measure the position and the movement of a particle, blah, blah. But there is a very interesting polemics here between Heisenberg and Niels Bohr. Niels Bohr reproached him that he is still too naive. Heisenberg basically reduces the uncertain principle to the limitation of our knowledge. It is, we cannot measure both. You have to choose. Either you measure the position or the movement, while Bohr's point is, and that's so thrilling, that no, in themselves they don't have position and movement. You know, it's not our limitation, it's the unfinished character and now of reality itself. And now comes my joke, repeated 30 times in my books. I hope you don't know it. The idea how to read this came, I forgot the name, to a vulgar, common, but it's well written, Introduction to Philosophy, where, I forgot the name, sorry, it's quoted in my books, where the guy tries to explain this uncertainty principle, but correctly read through Niels Bohr, through video games. And I love video games. If you are a philosopher today, you should study video games. I will immediately tell you why. His idea is this one. You know that the universe of video games, I'm talking about simple video games, you know, that I am too stupid to play them, too old, but I enjoy observing my son playing them. The world there is not perfectly programmed. For example, in the back, you see a forest, but it's not part of the game to go there. So it's meaningless to ask, oh, I want to see those trees there in detail. It's not in the program. They exist only as this blurred, incomplete background. Or, most stupid example, the interior of a house. If in the game that you are playing, it's not part of the rules that you can enter the house, then of course, why lose time? The interior is not programmed, you know. It's meaningless. And the idea is this one, that, it's a beautiful one, that in creating our world, but you can give atheist reading to it, God was a lazy programmer. God underestimated us. He thought humans are too stupid to move beyond atom. So why should I bother there with programming position and velocity? They will never reach that point. And we, as it were, caught God by his pants down, you know, as you say. We went too far. We approached this incompleteness of the universe. And I think this is something really worth thinking about. Because it's if we move beyond these jokes, it's a very complex term. This idea of incomplete universe. You find this already in good historical hermeneutics, where, you know, the first stupidity you should get rid of is this obsession with the original context. Here I like, but everybody likes him today, so I would, it's time that somebody begins to hate him, Walter Benjamin. When he says, he compared works of art with, you know, this is all the time quoted, with a shot on a film for which we don't yet possess the developer, how to make the image visible, so that he said, not only is later time, when you lose the immediate contact with a work of art, not only is it not underprivileged, like, you know, this historicist stupidity. You have to know all the context, the original context. No, I claim works of art in this sense are genuinely open. Maybe we can understand today some classical works of art much better